are blocking you from trying to communicate with you. We think anybody's coming in the last minute? Are we live? Oh, we are. Okay, so everybody watch your pronunciations. Now we know it. All right, I'm going to call order a general service meeting. If anybody comes on time, we'll be a minute early and we'll get ahead of them. Only for the people who might be online or look at this video later after we do it. I'd like everybody to just tell who you are, what your department is, what your district is, and that's it. Jim Gully, District 1.
Kiani Conley Wilson, District 5.
Irene Soriento, District 6.
Yep.
Yep. So
Yep. Pass the mic around because we got to have the people at home hear you. Turn it on. This is a test.
Gene Madura, one of 3 litter enforcement officers from sanitation.
Abbott, sanitation supervisor.
Renee Panetta, Recycling Coordinator.
Dave Sharon, Principal Code Inspector.
Chuck Wayton, Commissioner of General Services.
Kim Ash McPherson, District 2. You could have used my mic.
Chris Nolan, Deputy Mayor.
Sue Steele, District 3.
Aaron Vera, City Engineer.
Great. Hey, thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate it. I know it's kind of crazy. As you know, I like the round table effect. There is no viewers here. We're all part of the function.
Chair.
Carm's here.
We have Carmela, Council President ex officio.
Council President ex officio, Carmela Mantello, are you here?
I sure am.
All right, I just wanted to check. All right. So the idea behind tonight was that we've been hearing as council representatives out in the district, we hear a lot of things. And we get a lot of texts. Sometimes we get like 5, 6, 7 texts on the same address, and we send it out. And I know you guys repetitively go to these addresses. I don't know what the situation is, but what I'm here tonight is not to hear about all the problems. We know what the problems are. What I'm here to talk about is how can we effectively try to minimize those problems? Because we know we can't delete them. The repetitive abuser of our sanitation system and code system is taking up a lot of labor hours with our force and inhibits them from really doing their job in a more efficient way of getting more properties. So I think that we have to find some ways of trying to take these repetitive offenders and try to educate them properly, whether my dad said it, people learn through pain or pleasure. So either way that we can do that, I think that we have to find a way to try to minimize these repetitive people. Would get to the landlords, get to the tenants. I don't know what it is. You guys are all in those fields. For the council people, we hear it all the time. I brought everybody together tonight to get ideas, not to target, point, or shoot, just get ideas on what we can do together to collaborate a more effective force in knocking down these repetitive offenders. First step before we get into our new system of trying to engage people in the sanitation program evenly is to try to knock out as many abusers as we can. So I know that I had asked, I don't know if it got mixed up or not. What I had asked from the litter department and from code were any addresses that you guys repetitively go to, have numerous citations on, numerous tickets on. You're there all the time. You know who they are. We need to find out how we can work on those addresses first, so that by the time we do try to instep this barrel system, whatever it comes out as, that we have knocked out some of the real heavy hitters that cause us a lot of man hours, because we're going to need them for other purposes in sanitation. So that's why I'm here tonight. It's not about any other reason but that. And I'd like to get help from the people who know it best, which is our management system. So I'd like to start with anybody who might have an idea.
I just have one question. I'm not sure that we should be announcing addresses over the.
No, I asked for the list, but
Right, but I don't think we
we'd
should
have
be
that.
putting addresses out over the internet.
We'll do it through Ally Allies. All right. So I'd like to see who might start. I know we have a problem address that I know of in a particular area in North Central. There's been numerous calls there. I can't say an address, so we really can't focus on it unless we whisper to each other. So that's kind of tough. I get it. I get it. That's why I was hoping Rick was here so he can tell us whether we can or can't. But to safeguard our conversation,
Chair,
yes, Council
may
President.
I, yeah, may I suggest maybe a vicinity? Like such and such street to such and such street, that particular alleyway, you know?
103rd to 104th was a home that's always getting called to pick up the mess. There's another one that was on Fifth Avenue, which the litter officer and I engaged in tracking down the landlord and having a good old talk with him. I'll tell you the story. There was a house that was creating a lot of havoc, a lot of citations. Yeah, between 111 and 112th on Fifth Ave. And Kim was called about it. Kim called me about it. I went over, took some pictures. And while I was there, the gentleman walked out to walk his little dog. And I said, hey, I said, do you live here? He says, yes. I said, are these your garbage cans? He goes, well, one of them. I go, well, which one? Because all three of them have bags pegged on top. I go, you can't package that stuff like that. And it's out here on the wrong day. Did anybody ever tell you what we do in the city of Troy? And he said, oh, not really. I said, well, that stuff needs to go back in your alley or you need to clean it up. I said, because if it's not cleaned up, I said, your landlord's going to get targeted for a fine or ticketed for a fine. I said, and then he's going to want to come back to you because you're costing him a lot of extra money. I said, it's going to be very painful for him soon because we're going to increase those fines. I said, so, you got to do something. And then, of course, he said he would take care of it. I left. I ran into Eugene at the red light. He was coming around one way. I was coming the other way. So I flagged him down and pulled him over. And I said, who's got a number for this guy? We called the landlord. The landlord was very nice when we approached him, and we congenially had a great conversation with him. So much so that he felt so impacted, he came up to our neighborhood meeting last night to be there because he wants to be an effective part of change. And what I learned was it's really a lot about communication. And, I think that part of that would be an up-to-date landlord registry. We talk about it a lot. We've talked about it for years. Everybody says we're doing it, but, we've been doing things for a long time. We'd like to see them done. So we have to figure out how to do that. And I don't know how to do that. So I have to rely on the guys and the people who know how to do that to work at that and get it finished because we need to do that. That's imperative to really being able to track landlords that don't live in this area. So not mentioning any other areas. If you all know what those areas are, the houses. How, Gene, you're out there. You're writing up tickets on the outside of the fence. What ideas would you have that could help us in getting engaged with those landlords or those tenants to make that a better situation?
I just agree with you the first time. We do need to update the registry. That's probably our biggest issue that we face is no contact info whatsoever other than an address. And it seems to be sometimes even the addresses are outdated or whatever is going on because sometimes we get those violations back to us as a return to sender. So I'm not really sure.
Chair,
Councilwoman Nash McPherson.
can I ask you a question? Who maintains the registry now?
I believe the assessor's office.
The
right?
assessor's office.
As far as I know.
So I'm not sure they do because I asked the assessor's office and they said that code maintains. So I think that's where we got to figure out where we can find out who's going to maintain it and who's going to update it. I thought it was under the assessor's office because property are sold, that's where the information's come. So whoever's getting the data, it might not be getting input or they're not getting the full information or verifying, but this is huge. I agree with you 100% that that's got to be a huge first step.
Dave, I know who?
Ever since it started, it's been a mess. There's no way to get a landlord that moves a tenant in to send the new registry in. There's no way to keep up with it. We don't have ROPs. We don't know when someone is leaving an apartment and a new tenant is coming in. We don't know who owns the property until Belinda Richburg updates the ownership. If the ownership of the building changes, then once a month or once every 2 months, I don't know what it is, but
It's,
she puts the new information in. There's no question at the time of the deed. In New York, you don't have to file a deed. It's not against the law not to file a deed.
No.
So if I bought a house down the street, I don't have to file a deed. So the only information that code enforcement has is the previous owner. The phone number, as soon as they get the phone number, we get the phone number, they get a call from us, they change their phone number. We sent out 5,800 of these years ago. I couldn't even repeat most of the language that came back written on these forms. People would just not do it. And then it was, oh, well, we're going to fine them $75. How do we fine them $75? And then when we were trying to fine them $75, we had people on the council coming to us saying, oh, well, don't fine him. He's a good guy. He's my friend. But go over here and find this.
Nope.
And it just got to the point where we were sitting in code enforcement going, we're just wasting time with this. It's a total waste of time. Unless you're going to have ROPs, residential occupancy
Mhm.
permits, where the apartment is inspected for each tenant that goes in, it's very hard to keep track. Cahoes has them. Cahoes is as big as my thumbnail.
we should have them.
There's how many schools in Cahoes? Maybe 3.
Yeah,
So
4.
every time a new student comes in, it was explained to me, every time a new student comes in, code enforcement is contacted with that address.
So collaboration with the school districts would be important to us.
And again, Jim, how are we going to keep track of maybe 100 new students moving from Rensselaer Park to Turnpike, and then LaSalle, Catholic High?
Oh, I know.
How many public schools? I don't know what the answer is. We do the best we can. Every time an owner calls, the people in the office have been instructed to get that phone number and input that into CityView. So we can have a good number for the owner that we can contact. But trying to keep up, it's awful hard. And then we have to blitz areas, so people say, okay, let's hit all these alleys.
Yeah.
I've got all my people in those alleys. They have to inspect. They have to come back and write their own notice, because I don't have anybody in the office just to send notices. So these guys are on the street 4 hours, because the rest of their time is spent inputting information and getting the notices printed and getting the notices sent out. And that's on top of every complaint that comes into the office by phone, every social service inspection, every vacant building inspection that's being occupied. There's not enough time in a day. We do what we do. And it was explained to me when I started, it's like MASH. You do what you can
With what you got.
and as fast as you can, and hit the people hardest that are the ones creating these issues. But I don't know how many times that we've been called to, there's just basketball, kids playing basketball in the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's on the books. It's on the books. I have to go and tell that person that they have to pull that basketball hoop off the street and get the kids out of the street. And then what are they doing?
I agree.
It's awful hard. It's awful hard. If you guys witness what I witnessed today, and I'm just saying this, not, disrespectful, you would be in tears if you looked at what my guys look at every day, the children, the house, how people live. And then at the end of it, they're calling, complaining to us.
Mhm.
And the landlord doesn't throw the garbage out the 3rd floor window. The tenant does. but the tenant is never has to pay consequences. There's no consequence to the tenant.
Can I ask you something on that? I'm sorry, Councilwoman Ash McPherson, do you have
Go
any other
ahead.
questions?
I do, but go ahead.
I have heard, and I don't know this to be a fact. I've heard there's some municipalities around us that actually do fine the tenants.
In the 22 years that I've been here, we've never fined the
No,
tenants.
no, we haven't, but I'm just saying, I've heard other municipalities around us have been able to do that. Have you heard of that in any other
I've
municipality?
never heard of that. Because when my guy goes to the door and says, hey, what's your name? You know what they're going to hear?
Mhm.
Boom, slam the door right in your face. I don't have to give you my name, followed by multiple obscenities.
Okay. So if I were to ask you, Dave, if you were to think of one way that we could help minimize the consistent offenders, what could you offer?
Go through the entire building. If they're creating an issue, go there with the community police, inspect every unit. Because landlords they're not really held responsible. If I've got a 3-unit building
Yeah.
and I got one tenant and I go in and I post that apartment unfit and that tenant has to leave, he's still getting 2 or 3 more apartments, the money to pay the mortgage.
That's not hurting enough.
When you go in every unit.
Do we have a legal right to do that?
If you have
We're invited
complaints.
in. We go there with the police. We're here for a safety inspection. If they say, come on in, we go in. We need to hold them responsible in court too. Last month, a landlord, 4 days of a trial. When we asked for the maximum fine, the judge gave him the minimum fine. So he wasted our time. He was found guilty, wasted our time for 4 days. Guy had to testify. And at the end of the road, it was a $250 fine,
What was it?
not
originally?
$1,000.
It was 1,000, so you
250.
knocked from 1,000, so 3/4 were wrong.
And the judge could say, hey, you know what? It's going to be $50.
Do you find that the judicial system is repetitively dropping down those fines with people, or do you think it's just certain individuals, or have we ever gotten the max that we asked for?
Very seldom. Very seldom. If we get a fine at all. You have to take jail time away from it. And you have to have an administrator oversee it. Someone that doesn't need to be voted in.
To take away the jail time, is that something that the council itself can accomplish through the charter, or is that something with legal law in New York State?
That I don't know. I believe other municipalities do it. If you take the jail time off, you take the judge out of the picture. And you have an administrative board, 3 or 4 people, to make the decision what the fine's going to be. Because like I said, we roll into these same addresses over and over and over.
And that's what we're
It's-
trying to, because that
right.
time is not only the time going to the same address over time, but the value of the time our guys have to spend after that, just following up the paperwork and the court appearances. We waste a lot of man hours, and
We
that's
do.
what we're here tonight to try to figure out if there's something that we can do to try to minimize that. Councilwoman Ash McPherson, you had the floor. I apologize for stealing it.
Well, I just want to respond to what you were saying with the courts. I wish we had our corporate counsel here to ask legalities if we're able
Correct.
to take that out of our code. And if we had to change the legislation, how we would go about doing that. And then we'd have to create a board. So there's a lot of moving pieces to that we have to get legalities if you're going to have a board that's going to oversee it. But I did want to go back to, I'm sorry, then
I'll get you next. Councilwoman.
Dave, I just wanted to ask you on this, on the
ROP.
ROP. That's something the residency occupancy, that's something that many people have talked about doing and nothing has ever been done about it. And that's something maybe we can work on getting together and actually in putting it together and trying to move it forward to help you guys do your jobs more efficiently. Would that be a possibility?
Would it be possible? I don't know. There's how many buildings in this city? And
But we
how many
gotta start-
apartments?
yeah.
You gotta start somewhere.
We got to
I
start
understand that.
somewhere.
But these cities that have it have had it for 50, 60 years.
Right.
Now we're going to start right up. Okay, here's how it goes. Now, how do we find out that the person moved in?
So then we would need a full audit on what we have and who's living in our city, in our communities.
Every month.
Well, I don't want walls. I want to try.
I'm not,
Yeah, no, no, I know,
understand.
I
I'm just
know.
saying
That's why we're trying
that's
to.
what has stopped the process from moving forward previously. Trying to figure out a way to get it to work. And we're not out there just wasting our time. You know, I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I don't know what the answer is. I know that we do our best. We try really hard, we try to take care of everything that comes down the pipe.
You absolutely do.
That, we've got people with no water, we've got people with no heat, and the garbage in the alley in between 109. That's secondary
Mhm.
to life safety issues.
Mhm. And when you were talking about if we could only see what you guys see, and I have to say to you, I have seen it because I had a house on 7th Ave, and I'm not sure you were with me, and community policing were with me, and it was very, very rough looking at what had to be done, and the tenants were calling for help. And it's the same landlord as to the one we were talking about earlier today, the same landlord, the same stuff, not taking care of that property. And it's okay to have, in his opinion, to have people living there because he's collecting the money, and it's unlivable places. And we have to find a solution because a lot of this is in District 2. And I'm passionate, just like the rest of you guys are. We have to fix it because people should not have to live in these disgusting places that they're living in because of these absentee landlords that are doing what they're doing.
But we enforce the minimum.
We have to.
It is the minimum housing standards of the state of New York is what we enforce, the minimum.
Then we have to look at trying to raise that because it's getting out of control. I mean, the rents are going up on people and they're living in disgusting because of these landlords. And we've got to find a way to make the landlords not all landlords are bad. Don't get me wrong. You got a lot of absentee landlords that are coming in here. We've looked at the properties and a lot of them are out of state. Don't we have the property managers supposed to have property managers within 20 miles?
Yes.
And
we do try to do that.
And
I was speaking to a gentleman today and I said, who's your property management? And he gave me the company name and it was in the computer. We do the best we can with that also. We don't know that they don't have a property manager unless they're going to say, no, who's my property manager? The first floor tenant.
yeah.
Well, the first floor tenant is the one throwing the garbage out back.
Right.
Have you ever cross-referenced with the county's records? Because I know there's a lot of deeds that are on file because I do deeds and a lot of them in the city of Troy, they have a lot of this information.
Well, those deeds come to the assessor. Those deeds come to the assessor, the people that, turn their deed in, file their deed. That information comes right to the assessor's office. So every month that Belinda upgrades the owners, every single month, we get that new information. If it was me, I'd love to go out and say, this is it. This is the end of the road. We're done tolerating this. You know what I mean? And I don't know how to do that without stepping on some toes.
Well, I know the tenants, there's a lot of tenants that want the help because they have no other choice of where they're living, unfortunately. And these absentee landlords are holding them hostage more or less. and we have to look out for these tenants to try to help them. So if there's something that we can collaborate and try to figure out,
And the only way that I can do that is to say, you've got to leave.
the
You've got
tenants,
to
yeah.
leave your apartment.
You run into
And the
tenants'
own-
rights with some of those issues.
Yeah.
Correct.
sometimes, right?
Correct.
Because sometimes the tenants, they don't want to leave their apartment. They want their
Correct.
apartment to be fixed up
Right,
and they don't want the rent to go up,
right.
right?
Right.
Which, the problem with citing some of these owners is inevitably if they don't have units making money, the rent on the other units is going to go up, right? They're going to try to recoup.
And then
the
what
costs.
for the life of me, it slips my mind, but the point system,
Abatement points.
Abatements.
I have it down to ask you about that.
I have seen one landlord pay a consequence because of that since it came in. One landlord.
Who writes, is it just our police that write those tickets for abatement points, or does code do it too?
We do too. We should take a look at what you can get points for and what you can't. But you can get points for this, but you can't get points for that. And then again, you have to have somebody willing to do it. Somebody willing
To enforce it?
and put it right in the paper. Put it right out there in the news that we're not tolerating it anymore.
Yeah, no, not in our city. Yeah, I agree.
And that's
I agree. I mean, listen, for the people at home, people out there and everybody here, we all know we have great landlords. So when last night I had a good landlord take to offense what I was trying to say. But the reality is the good landlords would never have anything to worry about. If they do what they do and they're good landlords, they will never have a problem in our city. If they're not a good landlord, then they will probably have to face the pain of what they produce. Some might be more serious than others, but it's not about saying all landlords are bad. Definitely not. We have some great investors in our city, but we have a lot of them that invested just to make the money real quick. And they were sending their families up and down there to come up, putting them in a place, collecting all the money from them. I've heard war stories out there on the streets. So I just want to say there's good landlords out there. This is for all the bad landlords out there. The focus is to help you become a partner and be a good landlord in our city so we can clean it up. Because we have a lot of issues with the people who are not taking care of their properties. I'm going to, Councilwoman Steele, I know you had a question. You had something you want to
Well,
say?
we've moved on. I just want to
It's okay.
thank you all for coming. Let's not worry about how we implement it. Let's hear from you about your thoughts on what might work, what isn't
Right.
working. We can take the next step
Right.
as to what can we do to, or have another meeting and
Absolutely.
put the minds together. But tonight it's about hearing from you, and just doing some brainstorming, and I appreciate the information that you've been sharing so far. It sounds to me like, we can't do it all in one
No.
step. So if we were to focus on the landlords first, it seems to me that might be one way. And so if I'm hearing correctly, that is being updated once a month. Is that correct?
not the landlord registry,
Not, okay.
just the assessment, just filing the deed.
The deed.
Yeah, the assessor information is really where the tax bill goes. So that's not necessarily the point of contact for emergencies.
No, I
or-
understand
right.
that, but they're the owner. That would be-
Correct, but
that would be the owner.
we frequently don't have a phone number or email address or a way to necessarily, we have a mailing address, which for some of these guys could be the law firm that incorporated the LLC that they own the property under.
Or the
you know?
address on file.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Right.
They use the
Right.
address of the property. I was the gentleman
Don't they-
today.
So they don't have to really give this information like in an application for the deed. They don't have to give an info.
To be honest, Jim,
Nothing?
I don't know 100% about it, but all I know is if I buy a building, I can use that address
You-
on file. I file it and that's my address and I live in Jersey. And my mail from the city of Troy is going
Yeah.
to,
You can more or less buy property anonymously. Really? Yeah, under an LLC.
Yeah, that's a tough thing.
Code violations, why do they have to go to through the court system when our violations don't? But do they actually imprison people for this? They don't. So
Especially if you're not using it.
So is there any way to implement those violations in with our trash court that we're talking about discussing with our violations? Does it have to go to a court with a judge, or can these be separated out? Yeah. Essentially, they're violations, just like our LPOs. Could it be combined with our violations and exclude a judge? Handle it in-house. That way, we're able to assess the violations and the fines, and we may not be so lenient because they are repeat offenders, most of them. So that's an option.
Well,
So that's a good question for our
we'll
court
look into
counsel.
it. Yeah.
So we will find that out, what we can do, if we can make adjustments, what level that's at, county, state, or right here. I think we could, because we list the violations, I would hope that we might be able to change that. I don't really know. I'm not,
We'll
certainly not
We
an
can look
attorney.
into it.
You know, anybody else happen to know any answers to that? And
Well, I
Go ahead, Tommy.
What's the difference to decipher the code violation as opposed to the litter violation? There must not be a big difference, correct? Because they're violations no matter if they're in on the property or outside the property, like our guys break. So it may be just an idea or a thought to talk to the court system, because if we're going to handle this in-house, our violations here, I just think that it may be an option. It might work.
Yeah.
And we're able to assess, I guess, point system also, because we handle it now, right? Our point system. And then as far as the violations go, we know who the repeat offenders are. And when we're talking about a $750 fine, get knocked down to a $250 fine, you might be doing them a favor, and that's not what we want.
no,
Right.
no, because while he does that person a favor, he hurts all the neighbors around him. I just think that we have to get, and nobody really, listen, like I told people last night, we're not here to make money. We don't want to make the money. We don't want to hand out a ticket. We don't want to take your money. We want you to clean your house.
Exactly.
We want to clean your yard. We want to clean your alley and clean the front of your house. We don't want your money. Do what you got to do. It's simple.
Well, to educate, there's such a rotation with tenants right now.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's moving out now because now the spring is here.
Right.
We're gonna see it again. So there's gonna be people moving out and there's gonna be people moving in. So I totally agree with you that sometimes the violation may not be as good as education, which I think that probably is a good idea for the landlord to educate his tenants based on the laws and codes that the city of Troy has. Most of them know the laws and codes, they just don't implement them because they just want to rent it out, and whatever happens, happens. Big problem is that the landlord, he's not around. This is the tenants that are putting this material outside, keeping material inside, so on and so forth. So, it is a big problem. We're dealing with it now just during spring cleanup. And also the fact that bulk is now unsuspended. So the city of Troy's rate, as far as our department goes, look chaotic,
Yeah.
along with the code department, because right now we're trying to work alongside one another,
Yeah.
but we also have two different jobs and two different responsibilities. So we're learning that, but I think within the next few weeks after this spring cleanup subsides, I think we'll be in a lot better position. But if we can alleviate a court system, because if they're not going to put anybody in jail, I've never heard anybody going to jail, especially in Troy.
Right. So we might as well just take it out of there and
Might as
bring
well
that
take it
court in
out of
our
there.
house.
If we can handle it ourselves, we do it now with parking violations, with other things, we're able to handle it in-house. So I think it might be something to look at.
Anybody else? One more thing. I will tell you that back almost a year ago, I sat down with Renee and we discussed what I thought was a feasible option. You can't get landlords to read the book. You can't get them to do anything unless you hold their CO until they do. I suggested to Renee that we create a site and we do like these little 5-minute blurb YouTube videos where we actually talk, it could be multi-language, where we explain to the landlord sanitation, how it's handling your area, recycling, how it's handling your area, obligations of your tenant and obligations of the landlord, and have all these little videos, maybe with code, things that are important for code, because people tend to really grasp on the things they can actually see and hear because they only grab a part of what they read and sometimes none of what they read. if they don't throw it away when they see the envelope. So I suggested that we set up a set of mini videos that any landlord that wants to come to Troy would have to view and sign off to say, I seen those. Because if we do that, then they can't say, oh, I didn't know that. If we put it in front of them and make it an obligatory thing for a few minute videos that will just educate them, a Troy site for landlords, and have them register their name and their property on that website to view those videos. Now we have their name and their address, at least. And then they check off, they know. Now they can't go to court and tell the judge, hey, I didn't know anything about that. Because they all have to have the information before they get the CO. Certificate of occupancy is not required. Just not in like it doesn't have to, well, what's a COC? What's that?
Yeah, well, a COC is a
I'm just trying
certificate
to
of
way to
compliance.
get the landlords educated before we say, okay, here's our blessing.
A CO is only required on an existing structure if it's been vacant for 12 or more months, right?
That's a certificate of compliance.
Oh, there you go. Right.
Certificate of occupancies are issued to new buildings.
Well, COC.
And new businesses. Every apartment does not require a CO or a CFC. They just rent the apartment, and he comes in, looks and says, it's a beautiful apartment, I'm gonna rent it. And they go.
Yep. So that's the point I'd like you to think about till our next meeting. What can we do to adjust that so that we have a way? I know, like you say, you can't tell when someone comes in or out, but what if we had like a once a year inspection? You know, like we have spring cleaning. When you go through and you check, and then if that person's not the person that's on the paperwork, you know, the landlord violated the process that we would create to help, you know, the ROP or whatever we create, you know, just a way to back check that like once a year so you guys aren't going crazy. I don't know. I just an idea. How do we do it? How do we get the landlord to know that we're going to be watching them and make a more positive, responsive action towards keeping his property clean? What can we do to bring him around?
If he's in Troy, sure. We use door tags.
Yeah.
Door tags aren't working right now because they're either on the ground. Sometimes we put a door tag on the door and tomorrow there's a new tenant. So that's a problem, but I mean, that's our process right now. To educate people as they move around, right? Some people don't know whether, you know, their day of collection, for instance, is on Monday and now they're living in Thursday's area. So, you know, a simple phone call to public work goes a long way. But our form of education right now really is minimal. And it's a process that started after the LPOs were in place, right? These are new things because obviously we learned that writing a violation probably wasn't the first best plan of attack. Education was. So over a course of the last year and a half or 2 years of doing this, we know who the repeat offenders are right now. Those are the ones that we can increase their violation, which we've done.
Explain to me that. You increased their violation by what? Multiple citations?
Well, we look at the chart. We can look on there on City View, see how many times they've been written up and visited by our litter patrol officers. And at that point, we can guess, right, that they are repeat offenders, people that just aren't listening. So the $25 fine that they received the first time, now it's the 5th time, that fine can increase to $250.
Yeah, it's not enough.
It's not
Not enough. 5 times, not enough.
not enough.
I was kidding around last night. I said,
We already know it's not enough because
Yeah.
we've already established that people sometimes would rather get a fine, not pay it, but not realize that it's gonna have to be paid down the road at some point when they have to pay their taxes. So we're dealing with that now, to where I think people are now, they want to pay the fine now because they're afraid of what's gonna happen later on.
so I said this, you heard me say this. A lot of people laughed, said, yeah, we should, you know, it's a good idea. I said, when a person gets to their 4th or 5th citation, should make the fine $10,000. How fast do you think they'd learn then?
I think they learn absolutely a lot quicker than they're learning right now. And the good thing about that is that because we're handling our violations in-house, we may be essentially be able to do that because of, we're outside the system,
Sure.
essentially, the
When
court
you're done.
system.
Again, this is not to just say, hey, we want to take your 10th out, just to target the people that get hit 5 times with violations in their property is saying to me that they don't have any respect for the neighborhood. And they don't have any respect for our administrative body and our workers. And I think that at that point, if we do that enough and we make an example out of the first few, I do think that it can help down the road, but I know it's a big number. It scares people.
It is.
And it's not to hurt them, it's to educate them quick.
Well, most of the time it is, we pull up and we do have to do a cleanup. The litter patrol officers will assess a violation there of say $100, for instance. And the tenant will gladly accept that because they don't have to pay it.
Right.
So we're cleaning it up.
Yeah.
The landlord has no idea yet
Yep.
that he's gonna get a violation. So we've been dealing with that too. We're also dealing with right now, a lot of people that are moving out. The landlord may be within, they might be in Albany, whatever. So they don't even know that they're gonna get a violation on the mess that their tenant created on the way out the door. So that's happened. That's happened quite a few times.
I know it's tough. People move out in the middle of the night. Councilwoman Ash McPherson.
Tom, I'm wondering, and Eugene, Renee possibly, and Dave, Chuck, we talked about the task force, okay? And you had mentioned something that when they're like 3, 4, 5 times offended, Eugene is going there for whatnot. Like the second or third time, and these are the habitual same repeat offenders. And by going there for litter, there's code violations as well. And could we put together on the same ones that you're going over and over again to code goes with you and community police goes with you and you go in there and then we have to win because there's code issues. So now we have an opportunity to go into the building to see what's going on. I don't want to have people be taken out, but we need to start somewhere and if that's a possibility to try to get something to go together and try to tackle them. Is that?
It is a possibility on my end. I know that, like I said, Dave and I run 2 different operations. I could certainly have one of my guys link up with a code enforcement officer. We actually just talked about that recently. But because we're so involved right now into this spring cleanup that I think that,
Right.
their line of work, what they're doing and our line of work is totally different. We learned that through the process of us working together recently.
We have to devise a plan to do this really. And we do have 2 code officers that are additional, not code, community police officers and utilizing them as well. I think that might be something we can put something together. And is that something that's a possibility, you guys think?
We have been between code and LPO sanitation in conjunction with the spring cleanup routes. They have been targeting those areas currently as well. Going down alleys, checking out problems.
I'm talking about specific houses that they've been going to and they're up on their 5th fine right now, and that this is what I'm talking about, specific spots. As long as you're loud enough and they can hear you. You want mine?
So whenever I receive like a complaint or I am in the field and I notice something and it's something that I can't help out with, I'll reach out to either Dave or Jim Lance. Say, hey, look, I got a complaint about this. There's nothing that I can do on my end. But there's a bunch of trash in the yard or broken windows or safety hazard, something like that. And I reach out to him. He does his best because they're buried too.
Mhm.
Reach back out. Sometimes we're able to link up and do like a sweep through the alley, through that block, through that neighborhood. Sometimes we can. They do court on certain days and they got their re-inspections and whatever else is going on. I also reach out to Mainville. And he's not buried with, helping out with calls or, police.
I'm just wondering if there's a specific day that you can pick. This is a day we're going to, these are the fines that we did this month and they're on their 3rd or 4th fine. This is what's going on. Let's pick a specific day. That's what I'm just trying to see.
Yeah, I think more on what day would work best for code, because I know they have.
Right.
work and whatever else.
Right. I mean, it's something to think about, to brainstorm and put something together to try to,
Now, there's two addresses that stand out to me, and I know Eugene's probably gonna know where they are. I'm not gonna mention their number. We've had code and litter patrol officers there at the same time. It's cleaned up. They go in, they do their job on River Street.
I
And
know.
the next week, we're there again. Their violations are, I would say we violate them just on the LPO standpoint, at least twice a week. Twice a week for over a year and a half. We've got no response from the landlord. They paid their taxes. No response from the landlord at all. The tenants don't even answer the door. They don't bat an eyelash at what we do. They know what they know we're there to do a job, to write it up and clean it up. But that's a prime example of just a reoccurring problem that puts us in a position.
You gotta wake up that landlord. Gotta wake him up the right way, I
We
guess.
called them. We called that number several times. There's the trash is from the front of the street on River Street to the back of the alley. They've done, code enforcement's done their due diligence there. We've done ours. And like I said, the next 2 or 3 days later, we're right back.
What do you suggest we do?
The only thing we can do is trying to keep contacting the landlord, and which we do. He's out of state, and we just continue writing violations on those.
He doesn't have a property manager
I don't believe he does.
and he's out of state, so he's supposed to have a property manager.
Well, he's in New York City.
Right, that's 20 miles,
That's more
20
than 20
miles.
miles away.
Yeah. So there's no property manager. So what can we do then when they don't have a property manager?
That's a great question, because I don't think that right now we have anything in place for a resident that doesn't have a property manager. It might be in the ordinance, but we've never run that. There's a lot of ordinances that we're enacting now that have been in place for over 3 decades, right? That we're actually trying to enforce now. As far as violations and codes, things that were neglected for a long period of time.
Do they need to be updated? Are they outdated?
I don't think there's so much outdated. I think that nobody's really paid attention to that part of the registry. And I think that when a person maybe buys a home here, especially if they don't live here, that maybe there should be some kind of a clause in there that they have to provide that.
It's in the
I don't
chart.
necessarily know that there
It's
is.
right in our code that they have
Yeah.
to provide a property manager with access.
Nobody really enforces
So
it.
what, do you think the assessor would have a strengthful piece of that? Because she gets the deeds and people come in there. Would it be like something we should involve Sharon in at the next meeting? To ask how she can help us to maybe get that information?
I really don't know. I mean, say somebody bought a home here in Troy.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a person that comes and, maintains the property.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? What
Well,
are you gonna do?
we
I mean,
find them.
what could
They
we
should-
do?
they should be fine.
Well, we have to see if there's any, that's a good thing for the council to look at, whether there's any type of obligation there for, that a landlord would have by not providing a property manager for their property. The gentleman we talked to the other day said, oh, I try to get people to do it, but people don't want to work. I go, you don't need people. I say, you need a company. You need to hire somebody. They're just a lot of people just aren't aware. They just don't know. It's like, just do the simplest thing, buy the house, put people in it, collect my cash, get a government check or money, whatever I get, just let that money come in. I don't care what happens on the property. We have got to engage them to understand that their property values are sinking. They're collecting money now, but in the end, they end up with something that's not worth the value it could be, as we try to increase the city's value and the property values by cleaning it up. And I think sometimes it's really just about getting in their ear. From not all of them, there are some real tough ones out there. We know that. It's just, they don't care. They have no sense of community.
Well, they don't. And what I
passion at
see,
all.
is that the people that, the owner occupied homes are the people that are paying attention to us because they're there. They're not going anywhere, They're the ones that pay the most attention to us.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's perfect, but you know, when we talk about violations and we talk about what we're trying to do to move forward to clean up the city, we get a major response from homeowners, you know, that live in their residences than we do from the tenants, which is great. But when we have our meetings that we all go to, we always talk about increasing the people there. How can we get more people here? And what we see when we go to those meetings is the people, the homeowners, not so much the tenants, that are caring.
Yeah.
You know, they do care. So if there was a way that we could curb somehow, you know, the tenants' knowledge about what we could expect from them. And that is part of the land. I think that's in full, from what we offer. That's, you know, their responsibility, their landlord's responsibility, whether it's, you know, signage, you know, on the door for when there are garbages. We have signs for no parking, you know, things like that. So
I'm hoping they'll be on every garbage can in the city by the time I get done
Sure.
bugging Renee.
Chair, you brought up a good point. We also have tenants. It's not all landlords at fault.
Right.
Tenants are at fault too. Education, and I know you talked about the education, and I've asked previously, is there any way we can send out to these all homes, multifamilies and whatnot, information about recycling, about how their garbage goes out? I know you say go to the website, but people aren't going to go to the website. They're not going to do it. So is there a way that we can send something out to these homes and let the tenants know, hey, this is how your garbage is supposed to go out. This is what you're supposed to recycle. This is what you're supposed to put in your regular garbage. A lot of them don't know, don't care. If they don't care because they don't know, or no one's ever told them how to do it. And that's something that we've got to try to.
well, when it comes to the garbage and recycling, I'll let Renee answer that, because we did recently talk about more informational pieces about what we can get out to the public as far as what's recycling and what's not.
Right.
So I'll let her.
I've been passing around on the Facebook pages, the recycling page. Like I had somebody come to me last night. I sent it to them on the phone. I said, here, I got a picture of it in my phone. I sent it to them. But not everybody uses their phone, uses computers. They don't, you know, and if they physically have a piece of paper in their hand and maybe they put up the refrigerator, that one day they may like, oh, this is, you know, something. It's wishful thinking, but you know, it's a start.
Well, we do, like right now we have magnets, and we also have stickers that go into the recycling bin that kind of shows people what is recyclable and what's not. And from what we see, I mean, it's better out there as far as the recycling output and what residents are putting out, but it's not perfect.
Right.
But as far as any further educational pieces, I don't know if Renee has put more thought into that. I'll let her talk about that.
So Naomi has been working on putting together some really fantastic brochures. We brought one to the meeting last night down at South End and
Just
Osgood.
speak up a little bit, please.
Sorry. So she's doing a lot of customization of this stuff so that it's not just specific to the city, but it's also specific neighborhoods so that neighborhoods know when certain pickup days are and such. And that there's information that's about recycling, hazardous waste, food scrap. So that's definitely on the radar, and it's something that we're working on, so that the information is both online and it's also available in person, and to as many of the neighborhood meetings as possible. The other thing I wanted to address is what I'm wondering is, you just said something about the assessor's office. I'm wondering if there's a way that on maybe quarterly, the information can get downloaded from the assessor's office, and those landlords that don't have a property manager that are listed with an out-of-city address, if there's a mailing that goes out to them, so that there's a correlation between what the assessor has and what the information is that's getting sent out, because then we can target directly to those landlords that don't have a property manager on record. I know that one of our newer employees that's been working on processing the violations has been specifically asking about property manager information. But if that information is going directly onto the website on a quarterly basis, we know on a quarterly basis who is still missing that information. And that way that the mailings can get sent out to them at least once a year, if not quarterly.
So the person that's doing the violations, you said, would that person be able to look into trying to find updating the registry?
It's almost like a work in progress. He's actually putting them aside, and we're trying to actually, he's kind of doing some investigative work in a sense to find out who, when, where, and what. And one of the things we are coming across is what Aaron stated earlier, that some of these are basically created almost like a shell company.
Mhm.
Dead
And
ends.
the lawyer, it's just a dead end. So we're at least putting them aside so we know, okay, these are basically set up as a shell. They're dead end at this point, so.
But could he be updating the registry is what I'm asking. If he's sitting there and look through the violations and the ones he's going through and he got a violation, if he's can pull them up the system, I mean, it's a start somewhere just to try and plug in the right information that's not there for you guys to see. If that's something this person can, I'm not asking to do everything at once, but if they're sitting there and they're going through it and they say, oh, here's a phone number, or here's this, I'm going to update the system and put that in there. Is that a possibility that that person can do that?
I don't know that he has access to that same system.
Get him
because-
access.
So we can talk to Sharon about it. We can see in-house what we can do. I just don't know because there are several different systems that some of them talk to each other and some of them you have to enter everything in manually. So I don't know, but we can certainly ask him.
Yep,
But that's only really going to address things on the one-off. And I'm wondering if,
but it's a start.
agreed, I no dispute to that, but I'm wondering if a longer-term solution would be to have a regular run once a quarter or once a year. that
In
lists
addition to
out-
this,
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
in addition to it. Yeah, but at least it's a start to get somebody putting in there. And then if you're running the reports, you got somebody, hey, I can add this in there or whatnot. Anything to try to make it easier on the guys and the girls that are out in the field trying to do this work, because it's not easy what they're doing. They have to deal with us as council people calling them because, we're getting council calls and we're getting hammered over and over, calling Dave, calling Tom, I mean, that's a lot of calls that they're getting from 6 of us. And trying to help to make their job easier is if this person could help, that would be something to think about. I'll be quiet.
One thought I might have is how do we get them to get a property manager? How do we get in their ear? I know that we send out the tax bills somewhere. If there was some sort of way that the council could help in a way where you could put something in that tax bill that says, hey, in Troy now, you need to have your property manager registered with our assessor. I mean, is there some way that we can put a notice there where they would have to get one or face a penalty? Is there anything in our code that will cover them? Can we push them to give us that information? So we created legislation that said something like any non, what am I thinking? If any not non-residential landlord, what am I thinking? Out of town land. Yeah, any we know what the hell I'm trying to say. Any owners that live out of town past 20 miles need to get a property manager. Do not do this. You'll be subject to a $250 fine per month until you fill out the information.
It could be something like the vacant building
Yeah,
fee,
right.
which escalates the longer you prolong it. So that again, sort of like what you guys are doing with the litter violations, $50, and then it escalates $250 by the third or fourth time you're out there. Those get reassessed against the properties, right? If they don't pay them.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's probably the biggest motivator, right? Because that tax bill is going to somebody. And
Right.
if the person's not responsive for the individual violations, when they finally get their latest tax bill and it's,
Yep.
$2,000 more than they expected, I'm sure that
Yep.
they're going to call somebody.
And Chair, I have a question.
Councilwoman Steele.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to you, Tom, on that very subject. You were saying that it really smacks them when they realize that. Does it say in these individual violations as they escalate that will eventually happen if it's not paid? Do we know if that language is included?
I don't,
Doesn't specify or doesn't mention that it will
increase as we, come across the issue. But that is a good thing.
I wonder if we could add, I mean, not to make new forms, but eventually add that to the language and then to inform them that they will, if you don't pay,
Is that,
it's gonna come out, it's gonna come out of your
is that on the
taxes.
form? Is the re-levy piece on the form? Because I'm almost positive it's on the
Okay.
form.
Well, it would be something to check. If not, I think it would be, might motivate.
You know,
If you're not, it doesn't pay this minute, it can increase to this. If it got paid by here, it can increase to this.
right.
And if we need to increase those fines, that's something that we can look at.
Chair,
Councilman Conley Wilson.
I just wanted to speak a little bit about my experience as a tenant and being a renter of Troy for as long as I've lived here. A lot of landlords that I've had to deal with, even as a student, as an adult, they really don't know, like, they're really uneducated on like trash, what's up to code. Like even my current building, it's not in the best shape, and it really could be in really great shape if they just invest just a little bit of money that they're taking every month from me and the rest of the tenants. And I think there's a lot of tenants that really want to work with the city and really want to like ensure that their neighborhoods look nice, that the building that they're in is like dignified. It's like really, and so like I think there is like kind of like a disconnect from like a lot of the tenants in the city in terms of like how do we hold these folks responsible and actually like making Troy look really nice and like the like historic beauty that it has. So I'm kind of curious, like, is there a way that we can work together with some of like the tenants and like figure out, how do we actually hold these landlords accountable? Because where I live right now, it's owned by like a shell company basically, and they're only in Albany, and I think they have an office in Albany, office in Coes, and they still don't respond to a lot of the issues that we're facing. And like I'm a city councilor, like you would expect that they would care about that, but they really don't. And I do know that Trip does have a landlord training program where they teach them like, you set aside a certain amount of money that you get every month from your tenants to invest in your building. And I don't see that happening in my area and many of the areas that I canvassed for my campaign. I'm sure we've all seen it where it's just like this building would be beautiful if it was just kept up just a little bit. So I'm just curious if you guys have any suggestions or ways that we could help kind of work together, maybe even just having like a public forum on just like, tenant rights or, what are like common code violations that you see, common trash issues that you see as well. And I know, I love it. Even be a podcast or something, but just a way to generate like that trust and rebuilding that relationship with some of the tenants and the landlords that are being responsible. And I totally agree with you. I think the landlords that live in the city, live in their buildings that they own, they really care and they really want to like ensure that they have tenants that understand when to take out trash, when to who to call, like, and I also feel like there's a really big gap in terms of like bulk pickup with landlords, especially and tenants as well, where folks don't know, oh, I can't just like leave a mattress out there, even though like it's kind of common sense. You wouldn't think just leave a mattress. So just curious if you guys have any ideas or any ways where like us as council members that are interacting with a lot of folks, I know Renee, you had those pamphlets. I'm excited to help hand those out, but if there's any other resources that we can be promoting for you guys.
Well, for me, what I've learned is there is some really good landlords in this city,
Absolutely.
but then there's also landlords that want to take the tenants' rent and bring it back to their own beautiful home.
Yep.
Right, because that's where they pay their big mortgage at. And so that rental
Speaking of that,
property,
Mike, will you, Tom?
that rental property gets neglected. I guess the only encouragement for a tenant to invest into the the apartment that they live in is really essentially for themselves to live a little bit better, live a little bit cleaner. When you move out, you lose obviously everything that you, so everybody wants, yeah, every decent person wants to learn paint through the floors, really, do it the right way. Some of the landlords don't care about that. They just care about, they got a 3-unit, they're gonna bring that back, and obviously that helps them pay their mortgage. So, we've learned that just over the course of, our tenure here. I wish there was an incentive. I mean, if there's problems that come up, you can always, you and all our other tenants can always call our code department, if things come up. I don't really know if there's, as far as like owner occupied properties, there is incentives going on right now. And Mr. Gully could tell you more about that probably after I'm done speaking, but I really don't know too much about how a tenant could have more incentives than they have right now. Anybody else?
I think there's nothing that's going to prevent tenants from also reaching out to us. I have had tenants that have called that have said, hey, what do I do about this problem? And so Eugene and Frank and Mike have gone based on the request a tenant has had to go and look at a property. So it doesn't just have to be a landlord reporting. So I think that's a little bit toward the direction of empowering the tenants. And then also the tenants reciprocally holding the landlord accountable for the information that we provide and to have that be visible so that the tenants are aware of it. And we're working with DEC to have more materials and more access to more materials and have information that's bilingual, so it's that much more accessible. But then there's the expectation that the landlord has to be setting the rules up so that they have the expectations for tenants to follow. But if they're not, I do feel reciprocally that the tenant has a right to say to the landlord, this is part of the city ordinance. I had a tenant get in touch with me last month, and I've been in conversation with the DEC about the fact that we can enforce, even if it's larger properties, larger units, that we have the right, because our ordinances state thus and such, so that even if somebody is a large entity, that we now know that we can enforce against them. So as a tenant, I wouldn't have known that if a tenant hadn't brought that information to me. And now DEC is saying, yes, you can do that. So that gives more teeth to whatever the actions are that you need us to take as the city.
Dave?
As far as code, we used to go to landlord training. They would invite us, and the community police. I haven't heard from anyone since Hillary left. So, but the problem's never in the room. Problems don't come to the meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I 100%. Like we're all here trying to fix the problem,
Yeah, I'd love to be able to fix the problems, but
Well said, Keani. Sorry, Chair.
if you're not out there in force and you're not showing that we're here, we're here. It's hard to get the message through. Landlord in New York City isn't going to care if he has a warrant out for his arrest. And our arm goes 2 counties. Anybody else gets away. So if you live in New York City, New Jersey, and you own a building here, you're not going to come to court. Well, you're not even coming to your building. Why would I come to court? You know what I mean? And then you run into the LLCs that are issues. I mean, I went as far as went down to the Secretary of State and ticketed the Secretary of State to an LLC a few years ago, and still nothing ever happened. And they're supposed to have the name and the address, but they wouldn't give it to me. Oh no, you just ticket us, and then we get him the ticket, and then he comes to court. No, that's not how it goes. It didn't go. Without personal service, sometimes the judge is a little hesitant, to issue a warrant. During COVID, he wanted email address. How are my guys going to come up with an email address if I don't know that, where he lives, or I can't get a hold of him, So it's a catch-22. I'm basically in favor of going in and hitting them hard, because that's where they feel it. They feel it in their pocketbook. They don't feel it through, and no disrespect of me leaving a note saying, hey, your garbage is on Tuesday. If they're throwing the garbage right out on the sidewalk, they don't care what day the garbage is. And they're going to continue to do it until you deal with them, and you deal with them strictly. You know, I don't know what the other answer is. I don't know what the other answer is. In a perfect world, I would love to be able to knock on somebody's door and say, hey, you know, your garbage is out front. Could you come in and pull it in? I mean, just as an example, a bunch of years ago, somebody up on the east side had a pile of construction debris in their front yard. So I was called up there after two guys from DPW got the door slammed in their face. They said, hey, well, let's get Dave up here and see how he reacts, you know? So I had no idea that these guys had already dealt with it. I knocked on the door and I explained to her what the issue was. She hit me with a bunch of obscenities, slammed the door in my face. I said, okay, I'm just going to put a stop work order on. I taped the stop work order on the door. She opened the door, ripped the stop work order off, threw it in my face, and then hit me with a bunch of more obscenities and closed the door. The only way we could deal with her was bring the claw truck in, take the debris ourselves, and put $2,000 on her taxes. You know, you're talking about $10,000. Start hitting them with $2,000 to clean up. And we already had it. You guys are talking about, oh, well, why don't we coordinate with everybody? We had it. It was called the action team.
Right.
And it worked.
Dave, that was you and community, or you and who else went out on that?
That was myself and the community police.
Yeah.
The person that ran DPW. And when he called us to a property, we went through that property with a fine tooth comb. And a lot of times, the violations have to be there. I'm not just going to go to someone's house and post it on Fit because the bathroom
Right.
wall needs to be painted or something, you know?
Right.
But if you get into a house and you get 80, 90 violations, no matter what they are, that's a dangerous building. That's dangerous for those people to be in. And that landlord doesn't care if it's dangerous, because like Tom said, he's taking the money back to his $1 million.
His house is in danger.
We had two landlords just sell out all their property. Okay, two really bad landlords. We looked their houses up online, and they live down near the city, and they live in $1 million houses, $750,000 $1 million houses. And they're telling their tenants that they can't afford to fix the sewer line. You know?
Or a leaky water
Right.
line or a bad
And
toilet.
I know that the tenants feel like they're being hurt by us saying, hey, and it wasn't, hey, you know, you have to get out, and, you know, sometimes it was right now, you know, but we would give them 14, 21 days to get their stuff together, you know, try to find a new place. It wasn't just to punish them. It was to put them in a better situation. You know, I would give them names of landlords that I know. Hey, you know, call so-and-so. He's a really good guy. He's a good landlord. And here's his number, you know, or I would take their number and contact the landlord and say, hey, give this girl a call. She was stuck in a bad situation in a bad building, but her apartment was spotless. You know what I mean? Her apartment was spotless. What the violations were the landlord's fault. But, and again, it's not just the landlords. There's a lot of bad tenants in this city also that move in and just destroy. We were at a building on River Street with a garbage problem that every day. And when we went into those units, I couldn't believe it was deplorable conditions, deplorable. And this guy showed me a picture of these 3 units before he rented to these people. And they were beautiful, pristine, new flooring, new carpeting, brand new vanities, that kind of stuff.
It's just amazing.
Beautiful. And it was destroyed. And now this landlord has, okay, well, I got this building. Now I got to drop another 30 grand into it to get it back up and running, so I could roll the dice again on something.
So Dave, when did that end? Did that end when the administration changed back a few years
Yeah.
ago? Or
Yeah, it all ended with the administration.
was there any reason why they didn't continue it? I mean, it seemed like it was a strengthful piece. I remember that
I
happening.
have no idea why the next administration didn't, but they were all about, this is what I was told. We're gonna start over and everybody gets a new chance.
That didn't work
I've been
out. so
dealing
well.
with the same people for 15 years. You want me to start over? That's hard.
Chris, you think that we could look, maybe you guys could talk and look at that process and see if we could try to maybe implement something? I know we're looking at the task force and that's primarily what we're looking at, but maybe in discussion with Dave, because you got years of experience doing it, maybe we could put something together that could have a little bite here, just a little something that we could help move towards that cleaner Troy.
Yes, actually, Dave and I chatted with Chuck, and I know Tom has been involved in conversations as well about, and we are coordinating activities as well. But Dave brought up that specific item, and we're looking into see how we can do that type of coordination.
That'd be great. Yeah, and utilize the abatement points. Now, abatement points, they just go to the property, or do we actually issue them to like the tenants? Get a bad tenant, and it would help the landlord get the tenant out. How does that work?
No, they go to the property. So if you accumulate 12 points in 6 months or 18 points in a year, the mayor has the option to vacate that property for a year, or up to a year.
We need to work that.
Yeah.
What are some of the violations that you'd get abatement points for that are code violations?
Junk vehicles on the property. A lot of them are with police. I think that we should look at what you get points for and what you should get points for. A lot of them are police. All the points are assessed by the community police, the girl in the community police department. She assesses the points. But we could be better at doing that also. I could be better at doing that. And making sure that these people are getting for the points that they deserve to get. But we should look at what you get points for and what you don't get points for.
I'd like to have that done. I'd like to, I know the council, we would love to work with you guys to make sure that we do this right this time and we collaborate all these efforts together. Because it's, if we sit here and talk about it, nothing's going to change. If we sit here and put an action plan together and we move forward with it and make some changes, and the council will support some of those changes. We'll run them past everybody. I'm sure that we all on a council want to see a better, cleaner Troy, a healthier Troy for everybody around us. And we got to target these specific landlords that are really taking away the efficiency of our service, just almost like stealing our labor time as we address them too many times while we have so many more important things to do. And I really want to strengthfully work at this with you guys over the next few months to put something together. I am going to call another general services meeting next month, 30 days. And I really want to hear what you guys discuss in that meeting. I'd like to know more about abatement points. I'll have conversation with you guys. I know the other council people will, so we can find out what we can do, and the council will talk on your suggestions. So we need you to give us some suggestions of what you think, because you know the problems, you know what you need. We don't. We sit here and we ask you the questions because you have all the knowledge, and I appreciate the little golden nuggets that you bring. We put them together. I think we can get an increase in a cleaner city. It's not going to be perfect, but I bet we could take a bite out of it over a period of time. And council members, any other questions?
Chair.
that you have? Council President?
Hello, hi, everyone. Very briefly, I just want to thank all of you for joining the chair this evening. Some good discussion. Some of it kind of went offbeat, but very informational. My only message is let's talk about how to do it rather than not how to do it, because we all know we're capable of tackling these issues together. So my only message, let's not talk about how not to do it. Let's talk about how to do it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, council members?
I don't have any questions. I just want to have a summary of what my homework is going to be, because I wrote a lot of different notes down here. And I'm looking at my homework, or as council homework is to look into see if we can combine the code violations with the trash violations, citations, if we can combine those. If we can look at the nuisance abatement of points, and we'll look to see what we're gonna find, but I guess your homework is gonna actually give us an idea what we need to do to implement it, help us make sure it is going forward. And possibly doing some new legislation, looking at the vacancy legislation to try to do a scale of rates increasing, because that's what I was hearing from you guys, the violations, increasing the violations. And the other thing I got is, I think I covered it, did I?
If the language isn't already on it, we want to make sure that that language.
Oh, yeah.
Is
Oh.
clear. It's, okay.
If we can get a copy of that so we can look at it and possibly see what kind of language that if we can legally put on, because we're gonna have to check with our corporate counsel also.
Yeah.
Chair.
That's what my homework I was looking at. Yes, no?
This is-
Councilwoman Sorrento.
Thank you.
Wait a sec,
So
Oh,
wait a second. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
eliminate jail. I got that down.
Yeah,
Eliminate
that's-
jail time.
Handle it administratively as opposed to.
And you're gonna look at to see what we can do to get mailings out to, even if we target certain areas, just to start off with.
Sharon, yeah. Coordinate.
Okay, okay. Good. I'm good. Thank you.
I just have a small suggestion about trying to get a hold of these landlords. Maybe look at the water billing, where those water bills are going to. I do understand that some of them are going to tenants directly based off the meters, but if we're not able to get a hold of the landlord, I mean, maybe we can send something over based off of the information that we have from their water bill. I can't really think of anything else.
Along those lines, I was actually thinking, when it comes to a change in tenant or something like that, if National Grid or Spectrum or something like that would have record when someone pulls a new service. But I wouldn't know how that would, it's usually tenant and not the landlord that would be doing that. So I don't know that that would help.
Or you'd see a change in tenant.
But you would see the, yeah, I was trying to think if there's a way to know when a tenant changes, and that was one of the things that came to mind. But again, I don't know if they can share that information or even if it would be relevant, but
Right.
That's-
I mean, I just figured, that's another option to start out with is, because you mentioned that, or was it you? About when you've tried to get a hold of the landlords by a letter, they would come back with an insufficient address. So I'm thinking, okay, well, obviously the water bills have got to get paid, otherwise they get shut off. Maybe go that route and try and get the information from where these water bills are being sent to.
Could be maybe they're two separate, good thing to research because it could be two separate addresses, one that would get to it.
Yeah.
The one that's their shell company. Councilwoman Ash McPherson, we also talked about finding a way to pass legislation to have our landlords register their property manager with the city. And if not, we'd have an escalating fine per month that they don't do that, so that they will do that. I got it. Well, I'm just letting you know it's on the list.
Okay, boys and girls, let's get along.
Okay.
Well in the sandbox.
You did good.
I just want to thank you guys for coming. I mean, this is really helpful. We're all gotta try, we're all in the same boat. We just gotta fix what's broken. And if we all can come together and do it, I think that's great. So I want to thank you all for coming too.
Yeah, I want to say the same thing, that together we could be powerful, and I appreciate all your knowledge because we sit here every day sending messages to you guys and we don't know what you're going through. And to get that value from is really important. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And
Chair,
thank
Chair,
you.
real quick, can you add on the property manager ask code? How many miles? I believe we have 20 miles now. Do we want to bring that closer to say 10, whatever? Ask them if they could look at that.
We'll review that over till the next meeting. We'll have conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody good? Anybody want to add anything? Any other piece of the puzzle? Take a motion to adjourn from the member. Motion. She's not on, are you on? She's not on general services, just you two ladies. Okay. Adjourn? Okay, meeting's over. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.